This is the Big Fish Cares Podcast. Big Fish Cares Podcast. And here's your host, Benny Fisher.
You guys want to meet an Australian, Jamaican, Costa Rican bookmaker? Oh yeah, this is my guest from the NFT and VeeFriends community. My buddy Adam Bjorn is joining us today. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing good, Benny. How are you doing?
This is good. This is going to be like one of my probably most interesting podcasts ever because you're not the typical guest. You know, most of my entrepreneur buddies have different backgrounds and different industries. Right. This is not bookkeeping and betting and being a worldwide bookmaker is not something I get to talk about very often.
Yep.
You've been doing this for 30 years, right?
Pretty much betting since I was a teenager, betting horses, and then went straight into the bookmaking business, working for a place in Australia, straight out of high school. I was 18 when I first started.
It's all horses over there?
Majority is horses. It's a culture of horses. You grow up with horses. Like you guys are NFL. I mean, we have our footballs, Aussie rules, rugby, depending on which state you're in. But the horse racing, like the UK, England, stuff like that, it's the culture. You grow it up, and you were getting first Tuesday in November, you got off school because of the Melbourne Cup. So again, it was, you grow up with it.
I remember, we grew up with the NFL. I remember taking, I remember when I was like 7th grade, I got all the kids in my school for the March Madness basketball tournament. I charged everybody $2, and I just did a draw. I put all the 64 names in a hat, and for $2 they could pull a name. Whoever won got like $100. I kept $28.
There you go.
I remember doing that when I was like in 6th or 7th grade. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I was like, you know what? Everyone's going to pay $2. It's going to be random. They're going to pull a name, and I'm just going to wait till the end and just give someone $100, and I'll make $28. And that, I remember, that's bookmaking,
perfect.
Right? But like in America, though, back then, it was very only Tony Soprano and the Mafia, right? Did that, or Vegas, Las Vegas. What was it like growing up in Australia with horse racing? And I feel like horse racing over here, it's very
dead.
Horse racing's not considered evil or bad, or it wasn't back in the day.
Right.
It was just kind of like one of those things that degenerates did. They went and smoked cigarettes and smoked cigars and hung out at the track and scratched took their paper and screwed it around and had pencils behind their ears and things like that. And it was always dark, smoky, dingy place, horse racing. And so nobody really went. It wasn't for the average person. It was for that degenerate old man, right? What was it like in Australia?
Well, again, Australia was much more accepted. I mean, there was OTBs, off-track betting, but again, when you saw them there versus, US and even in Jamaica, it was just a different level. And then a lot of the OTBs were in pubs. So again, it was just depending on which pub it was in. And then at the track, you had bookies. That's the thing that in the US, you don't have that at the racetrack. But when you go to the racetrack in Australia, you have anywhere from 2 to 3 to 30 people standing up, taking...
Independent guys just out there making their own lines.
So they have their boards. Same in the UK, and they have their boards, and that's their job, is they go to the races, every day of the week, and they take bets from the people at the track, and it was just...
Is it regulated? Do they have to have a license?
Yes, of course.
Do they have to go?
I mean, they've had, it's been around for a very, very long time, regulated license. And then you had the OTB as well. You had the tab where they take out their percentage and things like that. So then you had choices. So you could either go and bet with the bookie with the fixed odds, or you could bet at the track with the tote. But then obviously the tote as well, you have your exactas, your trifectas, your pick sixes, and
that pure mutual wagering, man's for the birds. I don't know if anybody really, most of my listeners probably have no idea what parimutuel wagering is, but that is like horse racing, where there's a pie, and they take a big chunk out of it, and there's no chance you can win. It's it's all that money goes to the
so
house.
Generally they're taking out anywhere from 15-17% up to 40% of every dollar, and then the rest of the people in the pool are sharing the money. So
which is you can't win.
Right. So they're running a game, they're taking the stake out, and then everybody that's in it is just betting against each other and sharing 65% of each other's money and giving 35% to the house.
Yeah, we had like I don't know if you're familiar in America, we had like these little Army Navy clubs and all these little like clubs where these old guys hang out, like these little bars, and they'll have like these tickets and they'll pull these tickets and it's like that. Like they'll have like, there'll be $1,000 worth of tickets and they only pay out $600 worth of winners and like the bar makes $400.
Yes. There you go. Similar.
Yeah, but people keep going back like time and time again, like because again, they like it, it's fun, right? How did you get into it as like when do you remember getting into this? Is like how old were you?
So again, I remember Melbourne Cup days doing sweeps, similar thing where you said with the March Madness, you whatever it is, 12, 24 horses, they put in a bucket, you paid 20 cents, $1, whatever each, and you pull them out and then that's the sweep. And then I started to learn how to fill out tickets, and my mum or dad would put them through the machines at the OTB, and then I remember teenage years, I'd do the form on the Friday, get the bets placed Saturday morning, go and play Aussie rules football, and then sort of sit in the car and listen to the races while the senior matches were going on. And then sports betting was again in one state when I sort of come of age, and it just started in a second state where I lived. And again, George Foreman, Michael Moorer was my first sports betting bet, and I was on George Foreman, but it was 8-1 or something like this, and then I backed him by KO. And then again, I was just waiting for the, no internet or anything back then, so I had the teletext on the TV, so I'm waiting for the results to come in, overnight, and obviously
That was 94, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's how I turned 18 in September 94, and the fight was in October, November. And that was my...
Yeah, I was much younger. I was like 13. I think you're about 5 years older than me.
Okay.
But I remember that fight. I didn't bet on it because I didn't know that you could even bet on that back
right.
then. I'm sure that I didn't have those kind of connections. My mom and dad weren't letting me go to the track and like placing bets for me. So like that must have just been like a common thing, like right? Like your parents were like, they were into that.
Well, so my dad was partners with like trotting horses, harness racing, and again.
Oh, harness racing! We got a harness track over here in Washington, PA, the Meadows.
Right. Okay. So I remember we were going to the track at nights, and again, I'd give mum the $2 or whatever to go bet with the bookies, and I was just doing the form, had some idea of the math, then started to learn about the trainers, the horses, and different things like that. And you get entrenched in it and spend lots of hours reading the form and whatnot. And then after finishing high school, I moved. For example, and the best way to do it is I lived in Miami sort of area, which Australia is really the US turned upside down. So Boston is Melbourne, Miami is Brisbane, San Diego is Perth kind of thing. And it's the same size, somewhat, of landmass. So I lived in the south where it was cool, a bit like Boston weather, again, turning it upside down. And then, so in the winter you'd play football, Aussie rules in the south, and then I found out that you could go and play Aussie rules in the north in the summer. So literally I could go and play sport 12 months of the year. So when I found that out, I went first up as a 17-year-old to play, and again it was 6-3. I don't know how far it is, but it's 4,000 miles, the other end of the country, literally. Called up somebody, found my way up there, played for 2 or 3 months, and then went back to home, did year 12, and the day after my last exam was it. I was in the car and heading back to Darwin.
Now, when you say play, do you mean like actually play the sport itself or bet on
No, play the sport. So pretty much from...
Okay, yeah. I just want to double check because we're talking about sports. And I'm thinking like, are you a professional gambler in high school?
No.
I was like, where are you getting the money from? I'm thinking like, all right, like, I'm just trying to... What'd your mom and dad do for a living?
Mum was a nurse, dad was a mechanic. And they
so just average, regular people, just like grinding it out. So they would go to, like, it was all just fun going to the track. Like, it was just entertainment purposes only. It wasn't like they were...
And to go to the track, again, for us, it was a 2-3 hour drive to Melbourne. We lived southern Victoria.
So it was an experience.
So you'd go up, you'd have dinner, you'd go to the races, and then you'd get home at sort of 3 or 4 in the morning. Because again, the trots were at night.
So it was like you wore yourself out. Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense. We would never do that here in the United States. Like if we got to drive an hour, man, like but back in the day though, the sports, I think horse racing is probably the only place that you could like go somewhere local and bet. I guess if that, and I think that it was more. A lot of the horse places around here, though, a lot of them were sketchy. But then there were some that were like more like you could take like the women into, and like they wouldn't like they wouldn't like just pass out, right? But,
yeah,
like, not everything was like the Kentucky Derby,
right. No, and again, some of them they were family environments where you'd see other kids running around and stuff like that. Obviously, they weren't there with.
And I'm sure Australia was much different
because again, it's culture accepted. It's been around for a very, very long time. So that sort of led to that, and then when I went back to Darwin the second year, and then I think it was the January or February, I saw jobs in the paper, and said junior ticket writer, sports betting company, which I sort of knew who they were and whatnot. Applied and got the job, and that's sort of the beginning of it all.
Straight out of just curiosity and just being interested in it, like as a kid, like did you want to have a real job when you grew up? Like did you want to be like a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that?
I got into a couple of universities in different parts of the country. I think one was sort of architecture, the other one was like business administrator. I almost did pack up and go back to a job that was a business administrator with this football team that I grew up supporting from 4, 5, 6 years old. So I almost did make the choice of going, because I got like an internship and I could have went back and started that, and I just ended up staying with where I stayed in Darwin, and that was thankfully I made that choice. But then again, who knows where I would have ended up or what I would have been doing.
So, and again, it's fun to talk to you just because you live in a totally different, grew up in Australia, which is totally the opposite side of the world from me. And, that's not like a thing that's not like a profession that anybody grows up thinking unless you're in the mafia, right? That's what we were taught, the mafia, they're the ones that write, sports bets, right? Yeah, you can go to this place called Las Vegas where there's a guy in a cage and it's more like a bank.
Yep.
But sports betting was Tony Soprano, right? That was, or the Godfather type people, or, and so that's just such an interesting culture. Like there was an ad in the paper that said, be a ticket writer.
Yeah, which was kind of the funny thing of when I did get to this side of the world and learnt about all that, I was like, this is insane. Like, why aren't all the states taxing it? And at the time it was, it was post 9/11. So there was a lot of, the war and everything else. And I was just thinking, I would make comments, why don't they just open it up, tax it, and they can pay for the war kind of thing? It was just completely foreign. Because
it was controlled by the mob, that's why.
Completely foreign to me that it just wasn't readily available because, again, it was in Australia. Again, it was in a couple of states when I started, and then it sort of spread across the whole nation. I lived in a little island called Vanuatu briefly, which was kind of the offshore of Australia, where there was a couple of books there. England, Ireland, it was very much open there. Then I ended up spending a few months in India and sort of seeing how they do it. And then I sort of, got this side, which after the 2000 Olympics, which I attended in Sydney, I was just sitting there one night and thought, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? What's the plan? Emailed 150 sports books around the world. And then within 48 hours, I'd gotten a call from a friend of a friend who knew me and said, did you email a guy in Jamaica for a job? And I said, I emailed a lot of places. And he said, if you want to go to Jamaica, I can get you a job there. And so I checked, had the call with the guy, and he offered me, I think it was like $800, and I did a quick analysis, and the US
$800 for what?
$800 a week to go and work in Jamaica.
Oh, $800 a week.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like, all right, well, it's still not that much money, right? I mean, I don't know, not to move all the way around the world.
Right. So $800 a week, but the thing was, when I looked at it, that was like 2,000 Australian dollars a week because of the conversion rate. So I was probably earning that in Australia, and now suddenly I got a bump of 2.5 times just on the exchange rate. Plus it was Jamaica. I mean, I just thought it was wind.
Yeah. Did you have a family yet? Were you married and have kids yet?
No, I was 100% single and ready to explore. But again, you just think Jamaica, palm trees, reggae music, like, must be the greatest place on earth. Well, it's a little different, but...
I would say so, man. Unless you're at the Ritz-Carlton or something, or if you're at one of the resorts, man. Like, I don't know. You probably weren't at the resort the whole time.
No, I just, again, got put in at a hotel, and that's it. That's sort of where I started. And
then, like, where did you, like... Because I kind of know where you're at now, and I don't want to get to the end yet. I kind of want to build this story up a little bit. So you get to Jamaica, and, like, what was it like there? What's the... Because I don't even know anything about Jamaica, really, other than it's a cool Caribbean island that tourists go on vacation at. Like, other than that, like, like they have, sugar in resorts. And rum. Yeah. So, like, what was, like, first of all, what was the culture like for you, like, going in, like, in Australia? I'm sure you grew up pretty middle class, I would assume,
yeah.
Right? And then you're going to Jamaica, where I'm thinking, like, it's either you're super rich or you're super poor in Jamaica, aren't you?
Very much, yeah. There's not a lot of middle. It's, again, a lot on the low end, bit on the top end. I mean, it was interesting. I mean, I would go walking in areas that I found out later on I shouldn't have, but that's just the way I'd, when I went to Thailand or India and that, I'd just walk. That was my thing. I'd get to somewhere, and that's how I learned, what the place was like and what like. So I'd sort of walk. I was doing kind of night shifts, so I just left Australia doing US sports, so I'm working overnights, races in the afternoon. Then I move across to the other side of the world, which if you get a globe and put your fingers on it, Jamaica and Australia are literally complete opposite sides of the world. And then I'm doing European and Australian sports for the book there, so I'm then, again, working overnights. So I did, over the course of time, probably 10, 12, 15 years of overnights, because again I was specialising in the sports on the opposite side of the world for books that didn't have that skill set. And that was sort of my edge as well while I was sort of building through this.
And so were you just like, because I'm assuming back in the day, like the internet was still like, when did you move to Jamaica? In 2000, 2001?
Yeah.
And so, like, the internet, it was out there, but, people weren't placing bets online yet, were they?
Yeah.
Or was it more like a window and a phone? Like?
There was mainly phone. There was some internet. So when I'd started in Australia in 95, it was pencil and paper. Like, there was sheets of paper all around the wall and on ledges, and you would go and you'd write in the bet, and you'd calculate it so you knew the position. And then someone would be entering the bets into like an Excel sheet or a program. Well, then getting to Jamaica, there was more internet stuff. Late 90s, you started to get online a bit more, being able to bet.
Who was the customer? Was it tourists or was it people from around the world?
It was around the world.
So it was really just an office.
Yeah, correct. It was an office.
It was just a business office. It was just
a call
like
center. 200. Staff taking calls, punching in the bets into the system, and again, when I get to this side of the world, I'd pretty much worn out my welcome with all the sports books in Australia, because again, I was somewhat savvy on being able to find the weaknesses and taking odds from overnight sports in the US and betting into Australia and whatnot. So then I get over this side of the world. Well, now I've got another 50 to 100 sports books that I can start betting into. And again...
So you were really not only an employee, like then you were trying to, like, as a consumer, like you were trying to hedge stuff and like middle stuff.
I was
Is that what I'm following? You were trying to outsmart everybody?
I was straight up gambling. I was going...
Gambling, but not really, just like taking some information and trying to use it, but like you were still taking shots, right?
Yeah. There was bits of arbitraging, again, if the margin was big enough, but even when I was arbitraging, I was putting all the risk and exposure on one side. So I was like maybe covering a little bit to make my odds better on the side that I wanted to be on, but I was taking, I was risking it as much as I could, as often as I could.
But the other side of it, though. The people can never win, though, right?
It's not that you can never win, Like it's
well, no, but not over a long period of time.
It's a very small percentage of people that can make money lifetime, and it's a lot harder now than what it was back then. Again, you had operations on both sides of the world and throw in Europe as well that weren't looking at each other's numbers. There wasn't like a shared universal
they weren't sharing
place
information
to go and find, the price of gold or the price of an NFT or a price of this or that. Everybody was kind of in their own little bubble. And what I'd learned in Australia was there was a lot of Indians that would fly around the world betting on cricket, and they had this massive advantage of knowing that the markets in London and the markets in Australia and the markets were in Asia were all completely different, and they were betting to like 90% all day long. So they're just taking 10% out of, they're making 10% earn every time they're throwing a dollar in, because they're just taking the market and betting it to under 100%. So then, I get to this side of the world, and I actually remember something specifically was within the first month or two, I won $1 million in 1 week, Australian.
You did?
No, $1 million Jamaican. Now, when you convert this, it doesn't sound as exciting because ended up like maybe 40,000 Australian or US or whatever it was at the time. But it worked out that it was $1 million Jamaican. So on Monday morning, I'm like, pinging my buddy saying, hey, won $1 million this week. Which again, the story had a better headline than the underling of it. But again, it was...
So when you were in Jamaica, so tell me like a good story. So tell me like the biggest, like, not as on the worker side, because the worker side was probably pretty boring. Not boring, but like, that was your job. But like when you were doing it on your own, that was a little bit more risky, right? Like when you
So what I really learnt was there was a couple of times where I decided to just try and do this, not work, and just take bets, stuff like that. What I realized was I'm a lot better when I'm in an office and I'm forced to have that discipline, and you get
structure,
correct, and you're getting all the information. So you've got true professional bettors that even back in the 90s were using mathematical programs, understanding. So a big one, to give a clarification, the NFL. Years ago, flying west to east for a 10 a.m. game was a huge edge, because again, it was literally like, they were playing early in the morning, so they hadn't woken up so much. So the first half was a big edge, betting the East Coast team on a 10 a.m. game when the West Coast team was flying in. And again, back then, they were probably flying in the night before, staying a night, not adjusting, get out of the gate slow, and that was sort of a big edge. So these guys were doing this again 20, 25 years ago. So I was just watching them bet, take that information, and then just bet it in as many places as I could elsewhere, because again, they weren't adjusting the number.
Did you follow handicappers and stuff? Like, I know that was a big deal back in the day, like where people would have these handicapping services where, like, I remember, this is crazy. Don Best, do you remember who Don Best is?
Yes.
You know him probably,
I know the
right?
Don Best product, yes, for a very long time.
But like, I just remember that, like, from like, what year am I in? 23? This had to be in 2000, 2001. Like, this had to be in the early 2000s. I remember thinking, me and my buddy were trying to like be smart, right? And we're like, oh, like, if we go to the Don Best, we can do that. Then they have these handicapper things, and then you can get on a phone. And then, like, do you remember that movie Two for the Money? Were you like? Do you have any stories about any of that cool stuff?
No, I mean, not so much. There was one good one in Australia. Again, like the MVP award. The bookmaker I was working for in Darwin, he was asked to come to this private event in Sydney, where again we'd offer odds on like the Aussie Rules MVP award. So we'd go to Sydney, and we'd meet with some of the customers. So there was this one customer that we were going to meet him. Pulled up in this. He had this old beat-up car, and he used to, drive that around, whatnot, to do whatever he was doing. And he'd get to his house, and then he opens up the garage, and there's just brand new, Benz, there's all these cars lined up. So we get in the car, and we drive down to, it's probably Coogee Beach or Bondi Beach or something. And, as we're getting out of the car, should we lock the car? And he's like, no, don't worry about it. They know whose car it is. Again, I'm like 19 or 20 at the time. That doesn't really come to mind or anything. I'm just thinking that's odd. And then a few years go by, and I start to hear these stories about this guy, and he I think at one stage he ended up in prison or something like that. But it's kind of, you come over this side, you start watching Sopranos and hear all these stories of these kind of things, and that's, there was an underbelly culture there. And then in years gone by, there's been actually a series called Underbelly, which was done of Melbourne and Sydney and things like that. And as they're telling the stories, you're putting like, I remember when that guy was betting, or stuff like that. So again, there is a seedy side to the business and an underbelly side of it.
There's like that in any business, though, in any
100%.
industry.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, sports betting in America just gets a bad rap, right? Because we watch all
Yes.
those movies and stuff,
Yeah.
But, like, then a guy like me, though, was a young kid, like, who was interested, because that was, like, fascinating,
Yep.
right? And I remember when we would bet on games, and then these handicapping services would be out there, and they'd be like, for $99, call, and we're going to give you the hot pick of the week. Well, and as a kid, I just wanted the information,
Yes.
right? But then as I got older and more business savvy and more marketing, I realized that these handicapping services were just customer acquisition models, to where if they got 1,000 people to call that number, and let's just say they gave you the first play, they didn't charge you for it. Well, they give half the customers the Redskins and the other half the customers the Patriots. Well, they're going to get 500 people that are going to be calling back,
Yes.
paying for the next pick, right? Because they think they're on a
So,
heater. And then it just keeps going down their line to where, like, you can actually have a guy go 9-0 if you have 1,000 people, because half of them, you're just going to keep giving out half the winners.
Correct. And it was...
Does that make sense, what I just said? I hope the listeners can pick up on that, because if you're not a sports bettor...
No, but funny thing is, what you just said was the actual truth behind it. Like, I didn't...
Well, it has to be. Like, that's the only way to do it systematically.
Yeah, I didn't realize, but then, as you go along, learn about these touts, and again, you're hearing the information like, does anyone really pay for this stuff? And then I went to work for a place, and they had on the side they had tout gigs. So they had the sports book, and then they had the tout service, and they were touting the winners, and then advertising their book as the place to bet. So when you do it, so you're double hitting in a sense. If you give 1,000 people 500 one side, 500 the other. So now they all come in and bet with you. So you take the juice, the 10% off the top between those 500, and then the winning 500 come back, and you do the same thing. So not only are you getting paid for that second wager, you're actually taking your vig off the top of the first wager, and then the cycle just goes on.
It was like a Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme before Ponzi's were probably...
Right, so that's why, these days on Twitter and a lot of those things, you have so many of these touts, and, one of my goals is to kind of try and educate, like, people of, if they're saying they're, 5-2 or something like that, make sure you've seen the other things posted before the games are played, because people will just pop up and say, I'm 116-50 over the last 12 months or something.
Yeah, they give you like it's all false. It's all a lot of false marketing, right? Like, because it's unregulated, it's an industry that's really like, handicapping services aren't really regulated. I don't feel like, betting can be regulated, but the handicapping service definitely isn't regulating. It's like almost like it's the modern day. To me, it's almost like with email automation and sequences and like that. And then you understand, like, if you have these 1,000 customers and 500 of them just went 0-1. The other 500 went 1-0. But then the next, then I have 250 customers that went 2-0. I got 500 customers that went 1-1. I got 250 customers that went, you can just start sending them emails based on what happened to them, speak right into them, and then give them the people that have a losing record, give them some more shots and start the process.
Right,
over.
and again, even the ones that 1-1, they know that they could be 2-1,
Yeah,
so they're even buying in.
Well, because they want to be optimistic. Yeah, they want to be optimistic. They have so much hope because they're degenerate sports bettors. That's why, like, they, especially when you're calling, like, it's different when it's not fun anymore.
Correct.
Like, when it becomes like that, it's not, it's not like you're going as a kid with your parents 3 hours to watch some horse races, eat a cool dinner, and come back. And, like, no, there's, like, super degenerates out there that cause a lot of cause a lot of issues. But what? How'd you end up getting to Costa Rica from Jamaica?
So about, Costa Rica was sort of a place where there was sports books that I'd bet with over the years.
Yeah, that's like the modern. I mean, that's the place, isn't it? Costa Rica's
well,
like the
it
Mecca,
was.
isn't it?
I mean, it's not so much. There's not so much around these days, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, back in the day, it was kind of Curacao, Antigua, and Costa Rica. So about 10 years ago now, I was applying to get a license in Jamaica to have a retail betting operation, and obviously I needed the software. So I sort of started to look around at different places, and then saw there was a place in Costa Rica that sold software. Seemed to be what I was looking for. So I ended up flying over, meeting with the software company. Now, when I met with the head of the software company, he sort of said, "Oh, would you like to meet, 3 or 4 different people that, again, I'd known from the industry?" So I said, "Sure," Walked in to meet one of them. I think it was like the first week of NFL, maybe like 2013 or something like that. And sort of, went into the office, met them, conversation got to what was my account number. They pull up my account number, and then they start cussing and swearing at me of like, "Oh, you're one of those, motherfucker," it's just going on.
You're one of the sharps.
Right. So then there was a couple of bets that I'd placed not long before that. There was one bet all throughout the Caribbean and around the world, they just got hammered. So Formula One racing, one February, a friend of mine called me up, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. They're doing testing in Spain, and generally if you get the information, and there was one set of cars called the Bjorn that had Jensen Button as a driver, and he was 80-1 to win the Drivers' Championship, and Braun was 25-1 to win the Constructors' Championship. And he sort of said, the testing is going insane. They're blowing everyone off the track. They should be like 2 or 3-1 to win the Constructors and maybe 5-1 to win the Drivers. So obviously I hit as many books as I can hit at the 80s and 25. So betting the max, 1,000 to win 80,000, 1,000 to win 25. And then I'm obviously calling anyone I can call to get me a piece of that as well. So it was, industry-wide. When they come out the gate, they just won. They were winning. They got so far in front midway through the season, there was no chance that they were really going to lose. We'd all do some hedging back to make sure we covered our risk. It just had massive upsides. But any sports book you walked into in the offshore in the Caribbean area and mentioned that Formula One, they all just cringed, because again, this isn't their bread and butter, the US sports, and then
No, they don't know that stuff. They know the US sports and the major sports.
But the culture is, they want to put it all up. They copy some sports book in Europe or some sports book wherever, down the road, somebody doing it. Mm-hmm. So they all got hit with the same stuff. So that, there's a few of those over the years that are really...
People don't know how to say no. That's why those sports books, they want to take it all in because they're afraid their customer might leave them or something.
Yeah, and again, they wanted to offer this sort of broad stuff. Bottom line, it doesn't really hurt them. They still, make good money and whatnot. But again, there's just some of those sore points that they know they were caught sleeping. They know that they didn't know it. And again, when you go through these places, they have guys that are really good at certain sports, but they don't have traders or risk management people that are really watching this other stuff that, have any insight that...
They need you to work for them.
Hence why I came in, met with them, and then like the following year, so we're talking September to May, I got a call saying, "Do you want to come over?" And it was kind of at a somewhat of a good time because I'd been closed down by so many sports books, I couldn't really bet. And when I came in and interviewed with them and spoke with them, they made it clear I couldn't bet with them, which was taking away one of my best places to bet. So then obviously whenever I got into the negotiations, it was, well, your company, if I don't work here, is worth this to me as a bettor, so, I need to earn this. So it was a fair start, and then it kind of just grew from there. Again, they had a very good client base that played the main sports but had appetites for everything, and sort of from the year one they were making, anywhere from 5 to 7 million GGR on the stuff that I did, and within 5 or 6 years they were making 9 figures a year on the stuff that I did, and the team that we built out, and automated a lot of the stuff and things like that.
So what's your superpower in this industry? Is it like the technology side? Is it understanding the customer side and the bookie side? Is it like what are you better at? Like, what are you better at? Like, are you better at like the business side of it, or are you better at like finding like the hole somewhere and then like exploiting it, and then like that's what makes you also good to have working on the business side, right?
That was exactly what it was. It was from a long time. I knew the global platform of sports betting, so I knew the weaknesses in all the different places. I knew that if I started betting at 11 p.m. local time for no matter where in the world, whether it was Australia, Costa Rica, England, no one was watching the lines. So then becoming the overnight, building the overnight shifts for companies to reduce the leakage, it worked out that, money...
Yeah, sharpen the lines
money,
up, right?
Money saved is money won. So one of my big things in the beginning was just saving a shit ton of money for places, finding their weaknesses and whatnot. And then on top of that, bringing better product, being more aggressive, taking bets and servicing the customers. So I sort of went from really concentrating on the betting side, understanding the strengths on the bookmaking side, personally blending those two things. I was making more money betting than booking, but the booking was where I was getting the information and the discipline by doing that. And that kind of...
The booking's guaranteed money, though. Like no, guaranteed guaranteed, like it's more of a grind, though. I mean, it's not a grind, but it's like, it's more sustainable. Well, I feel like it's without as much hard work every single day.
Put it this way, you got 95% of the books make money and 5% go broke and lose it. 5% of the bettors make money and 95% of them are going to lose it. So yeah, it's, and you're right, doing baseball or NBA, becomes tennis was something that I did for years in a row, and you literally got 2 or 3 weeks off a year, and some weeks the tournaments were on all corners of the earth, so you're literally 24 hours. And there'd be 3 or 4 tournaments, and then you get the majors, which were 18, 20-hour days.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, from the age of 18 to, probably 40, 20.
How much sports did you watch, or how much was it just information from your buddies that you've been around the world? How much did you actually have to watch?
It was...
So it was both. Like, you were looking at it from
Correct.
all sides. Like, you were actually knowing the sport, the players, but then you also got people that got more connections. They're giving you this information. You're taking a holistic approach. Wow. Was there any type of, what was like the worst or scariest thing? Did you ever have like all this, like, Jamaica, Curacao, Costa Rica? Did you ever get yourself in any sketchy situations, man?
Knock wood. No. But not the funny thing, but about 3 months after I moved to Jamaica, I had a mate of mine come over. Very first day, he walks on an exact road that I'd walked night times, day times, probably 50, 60 times over the first 3 months. He walks down to KFC, get his chicken, and as he's walking back, he walked between a wall and a truck, and at the end of it, there was guys waiting for him, and then back behind him, guys were waiting for him. And they pulled out knives and, took what he had, and then he walked back up to the apartment, and he never been back to Jamaica since. So again,
Did you travel that same exact path many times?
And even after that, again, same path back and forth. So, again, knock wood, it's, I've had it,
Have you ever been screwed out of money?
100%.
Like how? Like give me the biggest amount. Give me the biggest dollar amount. One transaction that you just got, like somebody like owed you and they just stiffed you and you were never, like, it was just like, it was a sad situation.
So there's quite a few. I mean, I had a really good mate.
I just want the worst one.
Well, the worst one and dodging a bullet might be the same. So there was a company called Bet Camelot, operated out of Kanawaki. And the big thing with the offshore industry was you're always cautious going up to the Super Bowl when the Super Bowl was, because again, a lot of them would shut their doors after Super Bowl, take time off, or just go to March Madness, things like that. So when I first got to Curacao, it was right after the Rams Patriots Super Bowl that the Patriots won. And a lot of books were it had been a really bad season. A lot of books were in trouble, so they jacked up the point spread and they jacked up the money line on the Patriots, plus 14.5, 4.5, 5-1, stuff like that. Took massive exposure. Well, the Patriots win. These books can't pay, and some of the biggest books in the industry just disappeared. That was it.
Freaking Tom Brady, man, ruining lives.
So I'd learnt that, so I knew to make sure all my balances were all drawn down. I'd start in November, December, making sure I didn't have much in January, and then pull it down. So this book called Bet Camelot, the owner in that, you could sort of see that he felt sketchy.
Emotional. He's an emotional character.
So I could sort of see that there was, and there was really easy book. It was easy to win at, and you just accumulate and you get money. And then it was, there was periods of slow paying over previous years. And I backed a guy, it was Yuri Novak or something, that 60s or 80s, and had big amount of money on him to win the Australian Open. And I had, might have had a bit over 100,000 with him at the time. So again, I was trying to draw it down. Now, if Novak wins, then I've got 500,000 with him, and
a little nervous. You're not gonna get paid
so
anyway,
I'm
right?
hedging. I think he was in the final against Agassi, so I'm hedging. But then if you hedge and the other side wins, and then you don't get paid, and you
get double. It's a double loss, man.
So I was very nervous. So thankfully, I did some hedging. The guy didn't win. Again, you're cheering against winning six-figure numbers just because you're worried you're not going to get paid. And then
what kind of that's a great headline right there.
So then, of course, the book went out of business. Some places took over debts and did some deals and stuff like that. But it was really that was one that really started to pull back, keep balances low, concentrated on regulated books in the UK and Australia and stuff like that. And that's.
But the more regulated it is, the harder it is to take advantage of them, probably, right?
Of course, yes. And then now it's.
So then that as the guy, so you're willing to take that little bit of risk because that's all part of the overall risk management for a guy like you that's really smart about guys that might not pay, but you got to figure out how to get it somewhere.
And I had another one a few years ago. I backed Anke Huber to win the Australian Open again at 40s. I think I might have had 2,500 on her to win 100,000, and she won the event. I expected to get paid and didn't get a penny. So again,
Now, what happens in this international world? I mean, you probably know. I mean, would these guys just do they go on the run?
No, that's the one thing about some of them is they just not going to pay. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Tony Soprano died a long time ago.
So again, it's.
And you got 50,000 other bets, and you ain't got time to go worry about that guy because you still got your main thing going, right?
So again, it can be difficult at times. I mean, in my early 20s, I had a couple of times where I went bust. One was purely my own fault, back too many losers in a row. Another one was, again, place didn't pay, and I'd done some hedging and whatnot. But again, this was when I was early 20s, and my exposure was maybe 20, 30,000, something like that, to bust me out. And then I got to a point where it was just, certain risks weren't worth taking, just building it up and whatnot.
You're only making $800 a week, dude, in Jamaica. I mean, so I don't know, you must have been pretty good at this to be able to run up 100,000, 200,000, a million, couple, you obviously know how to get that money going in your direction.
Yeah, and again, so most people when they talk about betting, they're trying to win 53% of the time. My lifetime strike rate's probably 25-30%, because I used to bet on futures 40, 50 to 1 shots. I'm a horse race bettor. So I'm looking at 8 to 1s, 10 to 1s, 12 to 1s, 40 to 1s. I'm not backing even monies, and
yeah, you want to pick that underdog.
correct. So that's why I got to a point once I learned about Vegas. I was flying up there 5 or 6 times a year. I'd arrive day one. I'd walk to all the sports books, get all their papers. Again, no apps, no internet. Then you just go to the paper.
You had to wait in line. Wait in line.
Get their papers. I'd go back to the hotel. I'd compare it against Betfair and other global sports books. I'd circle everything I want, and I'd fill the backpack with cash, and I'd go out the next day and place my bets, and then I'd get the sheets again with the updates, and I'd go around the next day and do it again, and then I'd go back. I'd go back to Jamaica.
That's work, brother.
I'd go back to Jamaica, and then depending on how the results went, I'd fly up, and then I'd collect.
What's the most cash you ever left Las Vegas with at one time in a bag?
Well, I never left Las Vegas with the cash because I had bank accounts, so I would deposit it or I'd leave it somewhere.
Gotcha. Well, that's no fun if they're just wiring money. Like that's I'm talking like I want the brown bag of money, bro.
Yeah.
One time I left Vegas with 90,000 cash, and I thought I was like, wow.
That's good. I mean,
I was
there's
craps
not
player.
many that leave Vegas with cash.
I was a craps player. Yeah, it was a craps player back in the day, and I went on a heater, and that was a lot of cash, and that was interesting. I remember the people at the airline was like, because I had to run it through the scanner, and I'm like, I don't know, like they handed this to me because I bet with cash, so they paid me back with cash. So that was a little awkward, but that's cool. So we don't have a ton of time left, but I want to know, what are you doing now in the sports betting community in the world? I know you're in Costa Rica now. Like I know that you've been talking about some of this in our our NFT space and VeeFriends and stuff like that, where I've gotten to know you. But like, what's the future look like for sports betting? What is your role in it? What are you trying to accomplish? What can you share with us?
Yeah, well, after doing the bookmaking and the betting side of it, as I said, come over here looking for technology. Met a guy that had some, and then PASPA, the US, had sort of opened up, so I spoke to him about developing his software to the level that could get certified and licensed, and we're kind of on the precipice of that now, of looking at both Ohio and New Jersey to go live this summer. Again, a lot of it is, although it's a small niche, there's a lot of people that get limited, that shouldn't get limited, that are just recreational players but might go on a heater, and then DraftKings, FanDuel shut them down or limit them to small amounts. But even the professional of professionals, I mean, people could have, and I did relationships with books, of just give me a fair limit, I'll bet with you, you'll have the information, now go use that information to make your numbers stronger. And that's kind of all it really is take a bet, move the number, take another bet, move the number, and you go up and down all day long.
Yeah, it's like you literally like are a bank. I mean, you're literally just like you're like the Federal Reserve, I guess, in America, where like you're just kind of balancing the outside edges and you're just trying to play the middle.
Right. That's the idea. Now, it never really happens like that. You always need one side.
Well, of course not, because there's freaking 1,000 games, and I with live betting, dude, it's like every swing. I don't even know how they put live. I would love. Like, I could do a whole nother podcast. I'm like, before they swing the next tennis thing, like, how do they like say like, oh, who's going to win that point? Like, it's like crazy to me that they can be somebody can be sitting there constantly putting in odds.
It's all automated these days. I mean, you've got people have developed their algorithms. They're using they've used their data, and then when a point's won, they reprice the game, the set,
So it's already kind of set ahead of time with the AI and the computer and stuff like that. It's not like there's someone there like watching. There's not someone in charge of that match saying, "All right, you know what? This is 200 or plus 200, plus 250."
Right. Generally, no, that's not the case. Now, so the Masters weekend that just passed, yes, I was watching every ball in the air and changing the odds as it went along. And again, so there is still some manual effort to it for people that again, have liquidity, willing to put their nose out there and take a bet. But yeah, generally it's all automated these days.
That's so fast. I got to come hang out with you for a week. I just want to see what it's like behind the scenes. So, would you say that you're more in the tech side of things
now
probably,
I'm
right?
building the software in the middle to blend the other two worlds together. And it was funny. I was at a conference last year, and I was on a panel, and they're all talking about their problems. People are asking them questions, and they keep blaming the tech. And I'm like, well, I guess I made the right decision getting into tech, because again, most of the times it's not the tech problem, it's who's driving the tech. But again, owning your own tech and owning the value chain is just so valuable, because again, when you need to pivot and you need to make changes, you own, what you're sitting on. Whereas in this industry, a lot of the people, the operators, don't own their tech, so they're sitting on a third-party software that then they're at the mercy of.
They're handcuffed.
Right. So again, I'm learning different aspects of the industry that, I had no idea about.
What about on the customer acquisition side? Like, you say you want to open up in Ohio and New Jersey, and that's cool, and like you can be the behind-the-scenes tech guy. But like, who's in charge of marketing and getting the customers, and how do you beat out a company like DraftKings?
So that's the big challenge ahead. A lot of it is, again, the operator have their ideas. I think, again, old-fashioned hand-to-hand ground warfare kind of, find them on Twitter, find them wherever.
Find the influencers.
Right. Find 1,000 customers, then find another 1,000, and then build it up from there. And again, it's just the culture of, one of the things I'd always said, me and a mate, when we were sort of having ideas of trying to go to the US and things like that, it's just bringing the offshore home. So regulating the unregulated. Yes, you've got the ones that are up there now, and they're giving away more money than they're making at times. So that'll slow down. But you have a lot of people that still bet with their neighborhood bookie or bet offshore or bet stuff like that. So again, the idea is to regulate the unregulated portion first, and then, chip away at the others. But,
we still have old Italian guys in Pittsburgh. I swear to you, they still play the three-digit. People come and play the three-digit number with them. I kid you not. They pay out 10% more than the state does. I think the state of Pennsylvania pays half the money back out for the three-digit. They give you like 60. They give you 60% back, and like people love it.
That's the world over.
And they're probably making $5-10 grand a week, $10 grand a month, dude. They're living life, man. Like there's a bunch of that happening still. So there's still a ton of market share out there.
Correct, and that's it. And a lot of it's loyalty. Again, I've read where most people have 4 to 5 sportsbooks apps. So again, just make me number 3 and compare. Same as if you're going to shop for milk or shop for a car or whatever else. And then just...
My favorite is when you try to collect money off those sites. Like they make it so easy to deposit. They make it so impossible to collect. If you can change that, you can change a lot of the problems.
So that's probably one of the... Money in, money out's the number one priority. And again, paying people as quickly as you humanly possible can is the number one thing you should be doing in this business. It's a service business. That's it. All you are is...
But doesn't the government get in the way with that, with all the red tape? So that's all just like, that's the company just trying to hold it up, so that way they can keep your money in that bag.
Yes, because they think you're either going to lose it or,
Well, I remember, man. Bet US. You remember Bet US back in the, they probably still send me a magazine. I don't even know if I'm on their mailing list anymore. But they would literally take like a week to process your withdrawal. And by the time they would have it ready to go, you'd be ready to bet again. You'd be like, oh, just keep it in there. And then you would never actually ever get your money.
And again, that was just an operational ploy of, keep it in.
So that had nothing to do. That has nothing to do with like bigger regulation. That just that's an operational ploy to attack
purely
human emotion.
Operational. And again, that's sort of the...
Wow.
That is probably one of the number one priorities that with our operator that's coming in. We've said, get all the processing tools that you have and pay out this stuff as quickly as possible, even if it means paying out on a Saturday or a Sunday, whatever you can do. I mean,
let them collect that money whenever they want. Like, who cares? Because that's fascinating. All right, a couple other things I want to get into. First of all, how'd you get in the Gary V vortex? I want to know that story because you're an Australian guy, Jamaican guy. Like, where'd you start listening to Gary V?
So my son, who's now 20, I'm guessing, I think it was 2017.
Oh, you're getting old, bro.
6 kids. I mean, they're running me ragged. So it was about 2017. So for my kids, forever and ever, and much to their mother's disdain, I've said, screw school, doesn't matter, it's not, the future of anything, just go, show up, do what you need to do, learn what you need to do, stuff like that. And again, no university, don't bother, go do something else, become a tradesman or all that kind of stuff. Again, much to the disdain of their mothers. And then my son sends me this guy on, I can't remember who he was speaking to, saying, the school system sucks, this sucks, that sucks, this... And then from then on, that one video leads to another video, leads to another video, leads to, the
You're like, this is my guy!
The deep world of whatnot. And I think the biggest thing that resonates with me is, again, I didn't much care for people. I was just in my tunnel, I was betting, I was this, I wasn't very empathetic, I wasn't, a lot of these traits that he's really pushing. And then hearing that, and then again you get it from him, and then you get it from a few other sources, and it just collates and builds in you. But one thing that I have sort of really believed in is the karma aspect of, again, never not paid anyone. I've been not paid many times. It's an industry that people regularly screw other people. That's not something that I've looked to do. So then I've sort of, and I feel like I'm coming into the circle where, again, things have gone well, things are moving forward. You're already sort of looking for the other shoe to drop. But I think, again, what you put out there, in turn, eventually, it might take 20 years, 30 years, but will come back. So that's sort of part of it that really resonated. And then, getting my hands on the Keynote Koala, and...
So let's just tell everybody what that is, because most of my people probably, they hear me talk about Gary Vee, NFTs. They know Gary Vee a little bit more than they know NFTs. That's a whole nother world, like a deeper world that they don't even associate with. So the Keynote Koala, for everybody listening, is kind of similar to our Hangout Hawk. Me and Adam both have a Hangout Hawk where we get to do like an hour like every other month with Gary Vee and like ask him questions. But a Keynote Koala is where when Gary's having a keynote anywhere in the world, if you have a Keynote Koala, you can just like show up and hang out in the green room with them, right? And tell us a little bit more about your experience so far. What's it been like?
I mean, I'd gotten that just before VeeCon. So they gave me access to him at VeeCon, which obviously he's run around like a headless chicken and got a shit ton of done. But he took the time to sit and speak, have back and forth conversations. And then from there, I went to one in Germany. I happened to be in Europe, meeting with the tech team, and he was in Cologne, so I flew in there. Again, in the group.
How do you redeem it? Like, do they give you an email and say, like, hey, he's going to be here if you want to go? Like, because, obviously you guys can't all be everywhere.
Right, he has his website that he has the events, and, as he said in the last Hangout Hawk, years ago he was doing 100 speaking events, which would have been, insane to try and keep up and do everything. Now, again, last year he did a few. This year I think he's only doing 6 or 7, which, some may think that diminishes the value of what the token does. But, I went to Cologne. I was in the green...
Yeah, you can't be in that. You don't even want to be in that many places. You got
right,
a life
but,
too, man.
You go in the green room, and then that sort of goes out to him taking photos with people and speaking to people, and then ended up in a car with him and a couple of his guys and sort of heading to a Hangout Hawks a V-Friends catch-up in Germany. So now I'm meeting another 70 or 80 V-Friends people. And then, they go from there. And then recently
because you got a gift code. You got a gift code.
Correct.
Too,
So
right?
we did the Atlanta thing, and then I just did another keynote in Naples, Florida, where again, seeing him before it, and then hanging out in the room after it, and then
Do you have to do you just send an email and say, hey, I can make it?
Yeah.
And
so
then, they'll send
so
you
they
some
ask for
instructions,
30 days in advance for notice that you can make it. So again, I'm sort of watching and keeping up with it. They've got someone really good in charge of it right now who's very good at the correspondence back and forth.
Yeah, the experienced person,
right.
Sure, right?
Again, it was...
Was it that one lady? Was it the lady that started at the Atlanta event?
I'm not sure what she did or what she was, but...
I can't remember her name, but yeah, they're definitely running things better. Do you, how many Keynote Koalas are there? Is it just one or is there a few?
5, but I think you might still have a couple. I've only met.
So like, have you met any
one
other?
A guy named Mike, which I met at VeeCon last year, and then he was at Atlanta for the Gift Goat thing. So again, it's.
How much was that token?
I can't remember what ETH was worth at the time, but I think I paid about.
Well, ETH. Did you buy it at Mint?
No, I didn't. So it was a little bit more expensive.
Oh, I'm just trying. Well, no, when ETH was like $4,000 at Mint, but like depending on when you got it, you said you bought it right before VeeCon
so I think
last year.
ETH might have been in the twos.
Yeah, it dropped a little bit. So like, how much US dollars do you think it was?
I think it was about 80.
Wow, I wish I would have bought that one. See, I spent 125 grand on my second hangout hawk like a dummy.
Right.
Like, I mean, it wasn't a dummy. Listen, I told Gary the other day, I said, you know what? I said, I've been able to give that away. I said, I've gotten so much joy out of giving that second hawk away, and I've actually made business connections and more friends, and like, it's been, I'll reap that, like you said, 20 years down the road. Like, that's the gift that keeps on giving. Nobody will ever
Correct,
forget
and I
that.
think the biggest thing for me, again, is, I mean, you know, spending time with him and realizing how genuine, like, one, I mean, how the fuck he remembers people is beyond me. I mean, names and faces and stuff.
Dude, he makes me feel like a king every time we chat, man. I don't know how he does it.
But again, I think genuinely him and a few others that I have around me have just gotten me into a much calmer place, which you need to be once you get into this sort of high-stress business of, you know, software development and now going out to regulatory and launching and stuff like that. So I think that's been the biggest value to me, is just the calming aspect, and again, you know, being somewhat kinder and more mindful of everything that you do.
How big's his team? Like when he's in Germany, how many people is he rolling around with?
There was some local people, but he had 3 or 4 of them. It was only,
That's it, right? Like I'm assuming you don't take that many people with him. And do you get to sit like front row? Do you get like a seat like at the actual event when he speaks, or like are you just hanging out in the green room?
No,
the whole
a lot of the
time
time I'm like on the side of the stage or at the back or around the front.
Just part of like just like one of his friends hanging out, right? Like
that's pretty much what it is. I mean, he walks in, you jump in the back of the posse, and then you follow him into his room, and then you follow for the room to the speaker, and then you see him get mic'd up and behind the scenes, and then he walks out the front. And then when it's wrapping up, you go, you know, the rest of the crew, the videographers, you head around the back again, back in the green room. And then generally he's there for probably another hour doing photos, questions, autographs, everything else. And again, just, you know, speaking to different people on his team, listen to him speak. I mean, again, and that's probably another big thing is as we go into customer acquisition, it's just spending time with people. Whether you need to teach them how to bet, whether they just want to shoot the shit. You know, one of the things I've been really good at, I think, over the years is I can sit at a Jamaican racetrack drinking a red stripe with a guy betting 50 cents or $1. And I've been on tables and to dinners where guys are betting high 6, low 7 figures on different things, whether poker games and stuff like that.
hanging out with the Asians betting pie gal $1 million a hand.
So again, I think I resonate, or I don't, judge or anything like that. Again, because I was that 50-cent bettor.
What's a testament to like who you are and where you came from?
Right.
That's all.
And again, everyone starts out as a 50-cent bettor.
Same thing with Gary.
So it's
Yeah. I started out $2. I took $2 right out of like the pool. I had $128. I paid out $100.
There you go.
I felt like I was stealing. I paid $28. I was like, whoa! I don't even think the kids know. They know now if they listen to the podcast. They probably thought I paid out all the winners or something. I don't know. That's so fascinating. So how many more do you get the keynote qual? Does that go through like next year then till like the end of VeeCon
Correct.
next
So it's
year?
the same 3 years as the Hangout Hawk and all the other tokens. So you've got the rest of this year. I didn't go to Dubai. I got tied up in March, but I was targeting it at one point to go to the keynote in Dubai, but passed on that.
Are you allowed to gift it to somebody else or not?
He was going to Australia last year that he ended up cancelling, and I'd planned to give it to my son who's down there doing university at the moment. So he's heading to us.
Oh, his mom talked him into doing university.
So he went back down there to year 12 and ended up at university. Doing some computer stuff and now business admin. But with him,
he'll be back with Dad here before you know it.
With Gary heading down there again in August, I'll probably try and arrange something where where Brandon can go and do it instead of me. And then I'll sort of see where else he comes. I've got no word yet on what access we'll get at VeeCon. Again, even going into it last year, I kind of felt bad sort of going in and taking up any time because it was just, it's madness. It's VeeCon year one, whatnot.
Yeah,
but,
you're
but
just
the
watching.
fact that he took the time and then, and I went in each of the days of the morning, so I got time, day one meeting him, and then, day two again, follow up and whatnot. So, it's been a great experience.
See if you can I can be your content team and see if you're allowed to bring your own content team, and I'll bring my video crews, and we'll document your keynote koalas, your experience at VeeCon.
Okay, I'll hit him up and ask him.
See if you can make that happen, because then you can get me the wristband. I can see. Last year I had to go back. I found another influencer to do content for him, and I was able to wiggle my way in the backstage, and I got to hang out and do all that stuff anyway. But I kind of rather do it on the up and up kind of. I don't know. I feel like I'm too old to be sneaking around and getting myself into. But at this point though, with VeeFriends, I feel like I know so many people anyway. I feel like they just assume I'm supposed to be a backer.
Right. That's been the other aspect of it. Meeting so many different people that have all different, do so many different things.
Yeah, we all have our own superpowers.
Right. So that's the big advantage, I think, as everything goes forward. And again, when on the Hangout Hawk the other day, was just really saying, if there's anyone in New Jersey or Ohio that has a small business, hit me up, because that's kind of the idea of going small, whether you have a sports bar or a golf range or whatever, just trying to do something to.
So I'm your guy. So I'm not your guy necessarily. I live in Pennsylvania now, but I'm from Ohio, Canton, Ohio, where the Pro Football Hall of Fame is. And so, I got, connections there. I got connections in New Jersey. I'm in Pennsylvania. It's probably going to be the last state you're going to probably be able to get in.
Pennsylvania is not on the radar just because of their tax rate is just insane.
Yeah, dude, it's awful.
Right.
It's awful.
However,
it's awful. I want to move to Costa Rica.
However, I am looking at Maryland. There's a place called Hagerstown.
Hagerstown, Maryland, baby. Oh, yeah, that's only 2 hours away, man.
I'm having a conversation with them, so, hopefully I'm up that way. And
just here, you can just send me in as your double. I'll get. Listen, I got my hair. I got a little bit darker hair than you. You got that dusty blonde going. I said, but I feel like I could pass for you, right?
There you go.
Yeah. I could be like your mini me, and you can just send me in on these meetings in Ohio, Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland. I can. Now, I'm not going to be able to talk Australian rugby or soccer or anything like that, but I can deal with the American sports.
Well, there you go. Pennsylvania's right.
It's all about service. It's all about the service 100%. Anyway, right?
That's all it is just listen and
taking some of that Barstool money.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Yeah, there's a little.
You gotta start small, and you just gotta work it up. But customer acquisition is gonna be your thing, because I know that. I'm confident that you got the tech and the operation side of it,
100%.
front and back. But
that's purely what it is. And again, my goal is just to go in. I think the biggest sporting event ever in the US will be in 2026, and so we've got a 3-year runway to just see what we can do before then.
What is that? Is that
it's
a World
Cup in Mexico, Canada, and the US. It'll be literally like having anywhere between 84 and 100 Super Bowls in the space of 30 to 40 days.
Yeah, we don't even know what that is. But we will by
correct.
then, won't we?
And again, I think it'll be. You will all look at soccer very differently, or football, as I'm always told it is.
Well, I watch the final match every year. Every 4 years. Whenever it comes on, I watch and I try to pretend. I'm like, goal! But I don't know. I'm just one of those guys that try to fit in with, because in America, man, it's so Americanized. We don't really know what's happening around the world.
Best line in America, it's totally Americanized. Couldn't have said it better. They just think they've got their narrative. This is what it is. We're the world champions in everything that we play right here. Although we haven't taken it, anywhere else, but
yeah, we can't play soccer with a lick. So
the one good thing is you had a very young team. You went in with a very young team this time. Give them another 4 years, and you get free entry into the event. So you're definitely going to be there. I think they'll actually make a run next time around. Which
Is that going to be like? I'm assuming it's going to be in like the new LA stadium.
It's in.
I don't follow any of this.
It's in
so
7
really
or 8 states. I know Dallas have some, Philly have some, LA.
But where's like the big final match going to be? It's probably going to be in that new LA stadium.
I'm not actually sure where the final is. I'd have to.
Nobody probably knows yet. Who cares? All you want to do is you just want to be there with your pencil in your ear, collecting as many bets as possible.
It's actually this is what I run by. The four coloured pen is. I've always got this in my shirt.
You still got one of those from 1986.
I found a place in Costa Rica actually, and I walked in and I found it at Office Works, and I just scraped them all off the shelf. And literally every day, the first thing I do is when I put on my shirt, I put in the pen, and I'm good to go.
Man, listen, this has been a great conversation. I had a great time. This was fun. I can't wait to see you in a month at VeeCon. I'll have to. I think we're both staying at the same hotel. That'll be good. You come to the little hawk meetup that Laura set up?
Yes,
the hangout hawk party that we set up.
I already
have
my ticket for that. I didn't go to the last one. I don't know if I come in late or I had something else on, but I missed.
Yeah, that was the party. That was a big blowout, man. Like we had.
Yeah, I missed that one, so I'm definitely on for this one. And then I just saw we have a goat event on the last day of the event as well.
I don't like that channel, man. I cannot go in there and listen to all that negativity that happens in that Discord
I haven't
channel.
been in there. I hear bits and pieces.
Yeah, don't go. Yeah, don't go in there. You should just get my. I'll give you my cell phone number after we hang up, and that would mean you can just text through that. Because like going into that gift code Discord.
Yeah, I mean
And I'm sure everybody. I just lost all my viewers right now. They're like, "What is he talking about? Gift code and like spectac." Do you have any spectaculars?
Yes, I have. No, I don't. I think I have the Epic or something.
So yeah, you need to get a spec. You need to get a spec because then you could be in the cool club of Gift Goat, Hangout Hawk, and Spec. And there's only like 10 of us that have that.
Okay. Well,
so like you gotta go buy a spec. You gotta go buy a V1 spec.
I've seen a few of them popping up for a fairly fair price.
Well, I mean, you can get them cheap. Listen, wow, everything's fair. Everything's fair compared to when me and you got it.
Right,
Come on, man. All right. Well, listen. How can are you on social media at all? Like you're on Twitter, right?
I'm at Adam Bjorn too. That's where I've sort of been doing most of my stuff. Now I'm trying to. I hang out with Gary a few times, and it's the same old. And I keep hearing the just start. So now I've sort of just starting to spread out into.
I want to help you with that. Because I tend to be in that world a little bit more, like that, content creation, get yourself out there, right? Help market you. Like I can help that. That'd be fun for me. I'd actually rather shine a light on you than me.
Perfect.
So
Let's do it.
Let's do it, baby. All right. Well, listen. If you guys got value out of this podcast, any questions that you have about sports betting or anything like that, maybe you can send us a winner. Who's gonna Can you give us a winner of the next big event?
I don't know what is coming up. I know.
I don't know. Give me something like in who's going to win the NBA finals?
So I'm on
or the NHL.
I'm on Denver in the NBA. I hadn't played all year, and I got on them recently, so that's sort of who I'm riding in the NBA. NHL.
What about hockey?
I have not looked at. Usually that's something I'm all over, and I haven't got at it this year. Even the Kentucky Derby, which I'm actually attending this time, first time ever. I've watched it for 30 odd years. I haven't even done my form on that, and usually I've had at least half a dozen bets before we even get to this stage. So building this software in the middle is.
Well, just watch whatever the public does. Watch whatever the public does. You probably have access to all your favorite bettors who do really well, and you probably already know who they are. All you got to do is see who they're betting, and you can just triple up.
Well, again, it all comes down to the numbers. I'll see what the odds are on race day, and I'll find my Rich Strike kind of horse that's 40s or 50s or a good price, and I'll throw something on it. And actually, if they make it, I'll be making a Japanese exacta trifecta at the Kentucky Derby. So I had a big score on 2 Japanese horses in a big Australian race about 15, 20 years ago. And I did notice 2 Japanese horses had qualified for the Kentucky Derby. So just my throwaway bet will be a Japanese exacta, reminiscing about the time I hit it. I think it was in the Caulfield Cup again, a long time ago.
So you got to do it for you listeners at home that don't know horse racing. You got to do an exacta box. That way, if it comes in 1-2, it doesn't really matter which one. Just bet both Japanese horses. You heard it right here on the Big Fish Cares podcast. If it's a winner, I want 10%, and we'll donate half of it to a charity, and then the other half will go to me and Adam's party at VeeCon. So thanks for listening. Have a great week, everybody. We'll be back next Friday for another edition of the Big Fish Cares podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Big Fish Cares podcast.